okay, y'all, I'm gonna keep it real. If this is not about Dow, this is not about Mitchell. At this point, it's not even really about Straightway anymore. We already know that these leaders are manipulative. That's obvious. That's not even surprising anymore. What I really want to know is, why are you still there? Why are y'all still defending men who've lied, manipulated, and exploited people in the name of the Messiah? At some point, it stops being about who's running the game and it becomes about, why are you still playing it? And I say all of that with love, but also truth, because the majority of people there are not in a righteous walk. They're in a trauma loop that is continuing to be spiritualized. So we can really break this all the way down. The people that are still in that place, I want to go ahead and say that they're experiencing what you would call a trauma bond. And that is a very, very real thing. This happens when someone gives you a mixture of pain and reward. They hurt you, but they also validate you. They control you, but they call it care. They silence you. They call it structure and order and obedience. And over time, you literally don't know how to tell the difference anymore. So now you pair that with being black in America, where we've been raised for generations to believe things like endurance equals strength, and suffering means that you've been called and chosen. Generations of belief that obedience is love, and speaking out of any kind is rebellion. So now you're trapped in a religious system that rewards you for enduring, not healing, but enduring, being resilient. You get praised for being quiet, your silence. This keeps you in place through fear, guilt, and an illusion of righteousness. When we understand that we're literally drawn to what's familiar, even when it's harmful, until you really begin to heal, you will always confuse pain with purpose. And that's exactly what's happening here. People are staying not because they agree, but because they've built their entire identity around being set apart, being an Israelite, being a Hebrew Israelite, and a straightway truth. You're dependent. You're dependent because you've never been taught that the Most High is still with you, even when you say no, even when you disagree, even when you're loud. He's still with you. I would say that you're not just a part of a church. You're in a relational contract, and its roots and its anchor is in emotional survival. The anchor should be truth, but in places like that, the anchor is emotional survival. And the way this works is because, and the reason this works is because you were never taught to trust your own voice. It starts as a child, your childhood. You were told that submission is protection. You praised for disappearing, essentially. Just sit down, be quiet, don't say anything. When you do that well, you're a good child. So now, as an adult, you think belonging means obedience. But that is not community. That's a cult of emotional self-abandonment. Let's call it what it is. Because the people in power, they exploit you because they know your deepest fear really isn't hell. It's being alone. It's being discarded. Being uncertain. This is what you call a false belonging. because it feels like intimacy and it feels like purpose, but it's proximity to power disguised as love. So if I were to ask you, who are you outside of that ministry? I don't think a lot of people would have an answer. A lot of people still there, they wouldn't know. They don't know who they are. I've heard people say their lives are over. It's not about them at all anymore. It's about the needs of the community. It's about the children. It's about the culture. But if I were to ask you, who are you outside of Straightway? You don't know. Because you fused your identity with your obedience. And you fused your holiness and measure it by how well you follow the rules. Your worth is defined by how silent you are. Your womanhood is defined by how much you submit. Your manhood is defined by how much you dominate. You've traded your identity for approval. That is not a transformation. That's not a healthy transformation. That's emotional enmeshment, which is something that runs rampant in Black homes. But this is culturally, this is worldwide. Go behind me, write down these words and look them up and read them and tell me in the comments what you think, if it fits. So I don't think it's beneficial to act shocked that the ministry is still growing, because it has nothing to do with its righteousness. That's what they will try to say. You know, all the bad is getting out and making room for the good, but this place is not growing because of righteousness. It is strategically targeting the unhealed parts of people who need someone to make decisions for them. That's why it's growing. Because it strategically targets people who are scared of their own voice. People who were never taught to make boundaries. People who were never taught to respect boundaries. People who mistake structure for love and want so badly to be chosen by their creator that they'll accept abuse if it comes with scripture. That's why Mitchell can lie and still be protected. That's why NDAs get signed. That's why the same men can be exposed again and again and again, and the system doesn't collapse. It's taking some bruises and some hits, of course. There is a obvious damage taking place, but it's still thriving. Mansions are still being built. You know, people are still defending and supporting and severing relationships that are necessary for their healing. But the collapse doesn't start with the leaders. It literally starts with the followers. We long for belonging. But a real true belonging never requires you to betray yourself. One that's good for you, one that's meant for you. It would never require something so severe. You're not disobedient for choosing healing. You're not rebellious for choosing freedom. So I would say that you are allowed to walk away from systems that once made you feel safe. You are allowed to question. You are allowed to grieve. You are allowed to grow past what once gave your life structure. That's part of the becoming. I don't think people are staying because it's this righteous place. I think people are staying because they're afraid of who they'll be without it. And that fear is your invitation to heal. Because the freedom does not feel good at first, especially when you've been bound your whole life. It does not feel good. It does not feel familiar. But if your faith requires fear It requires silence, and if your faith requires control to survive, then maybe that's not faith at all. I think that's more captivity. And captivity ends the moment that you realize the ministry doesn't fall when the leader is exposed. It ends when you realize that it'll fall when the followers wake up. If you need someone else to fall, or you're waiting on someone to fall in order for you to finally stand up, you were never following the Most High. You were just afraid to walk by yourself. A lot of these people are not being loyal to the Most High. You're being loyal to dysfunction that knows your name, quotes a few scriptures, and does not really require you to heal. You're not scared to leave a man. You're scared to face who you are without the system telling you what to think, what to wear, who to be, how to talk. So ask yourself, am I really here out of conviction, or is this just codependency? Really try to understand that truth does not need loyalty to survive, y'all. But lies do. Lies absolutely do. That's why they call your silent submission. Because if you ever said what you really felt, the whole thing will fall apart. Let it fall. Let it fall and watch what beautiful things come when you finally start telling yourself the truth. Because you're not confused. You're conditioned. You've just been in it for so long that the dysfunction started sounding like discipline. And now the healing sounds like rebellion. But your healing is your birthright. And peace won't require you to shrink to keep it. It will never do that. If this truth made you uncomfortable, that's good. That's good. Because the uncomfortable people are the ones that's getting free.